comfortable do you feel out here? I know you're not 100% and still kind of coming back and can't do everything.
I think I get more comfortable out here every day. I get more comfortable with my knee and where it's at every day the more I'm out here. Obviously it'd be nice to get out there and take some live reps, and I think we're progressing towards that. And I'm sure that once I get out there, and take some reps in 7-on-7 or in team, things will really start to come together.
Based on everything you've done out here and as you're progressing, is there any doubt at all that you'll be able to come back and be, the guy that was the #1 overall pick once upon a time?
No. It feels great. The staff here has done a great job. I would say in the past, 6 to 8 weeks, things really kind of turned a corner and made a lot of progress. And, I think that's a credit to the plan that they've put together, to what the people in St. Louis did before I got here. But, I think as long as we continue to trend in the right direction, then I'll be fine.
Sam, can you talk about the offense and your take on the offense and what you've learned so far?
It's a lot of fun. Like I said, I haven't got out there and actually got to run it, but just watching it on tape, talking about it. I love the tempo. I love how fast we play. I think, it fits my style of game, making quick decisions. The run game's a little different. Obviously we've been running 2-back power. It's a lot of the zone read stuff, which is new to me, but, I see the advantages of it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get out there and actually run.
What was going through your mind when you heard all these rumors about the Mariota stuff?
Man, I learned a long time ago not to pay attention to it. It was out of my control. I focus on just controlling what I can control, and all I could do is show up to work every day, continue to rehab, continue to get better, and fortunately I'm still here, and I'm excited about the opportunity that I have.
Were you given any insurance that you wouldn't be traded from the coaching staff?
We didn't really have discussions like that. I don't think it's their job to fill me in on what they're thinking upstairs. I felt pretty comfortable all along just in the conversations that I had with Chip, from the beginning since I've been here. So, like I said, I was just worried about what I could control, and that was the rehab.
What are your limitations right now?
We're just kind of taking it on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, continuing to push the knee, doing more things every week, and as long as it continues to respond well, we'll keep adding more of that. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'm sure next week I'll do a little more than I did this week.
At one point you had to scale back. At one point you had to scale back a little bit. Was there any sort of setback, or was that just part of the plan?
I think that was just part of the plan. I don't think it was necessarily a scale back. I think, they wanted to push it, see how it responded. I think it responded well, and they knew that it could handle it, but then we just took it back because we had, an extra amount of time.
You've been through this before, so you have something to compare to recently. I know it's a bad memory and everything else, but
right.
How would you compare this to the first time for you?
I think overall the process, it's taken a little longer the second time around, but I think I told you guys when I first got here, from everyone I've talked to, they say that's normal, they say that's what to expect. I think it really has gotten a lot better in the past, 2 months, month and a half, and I think as long as it continues to do that, it should be no issue.
Do you have any questions you'll be ready for the first game? Do you have any question that you'll be ready for the first game of the season?
Like I said, I think as long as we continue to progress and we don't have any setbacks, I feel very comfortable with where my knee's at right now.
Are you interested in signing a contract extension to be here long term?
That's really not up to me. I've got an agent. Obviously, the people upstairs here, they're the ones who talk about that stuff. I'm just worried about rehab and trying to learn this offense and get on the field and play again.
How do you respond to people who have doubts whether or not you can be able to last the whole season because of recent health issues?
There's reasons for it. But like I said earlier, I don't pay attention to what's said outside this building. I don't pay attention to anything that's out of my control. All I'm worried about is coming back strong, being ready, and I think things will play out.
Sam, 2 more guys. How's it been playing this last year out without an extension?
Like I said, that's not up to me. That's up to my agent and the people upstairs.
It's your decision, though. He works for you, the agent. I'm saying, are you comfortable playing under a 1-year deal? Are you personally comfortable with that?
If that's what it is, then that's what it is. I don't have any control over that. If they don't offer anything or we don't talk about it, then that's what I'm going to do.
When you look at this team right now, seeing this team on the field, do you think this team is a playoff team right here, right today?
I think the thing about this team is in the 3 days that we've come in on the field, we've worked extremely hard. I think there's a lot of talent in that building. Obviously they've had some success here in the past 2 years, winning 10 games each. We're just trying to get better each day. And I think if we continue to get better, I think we'll be a very good football team this year.
Sam, what's it like for you to come into a new locker room and establish yourself as the guy? How's that worked, and how does it work for you moving forward?
I think you just got to be yourself. That's been my plan. In college when I first got to St. Louis, that's my plan here. I'm just going to be myself, show up to work every day, work hard, show everyone in the locker room that I deserve to be here, and hopefully they'll follow me.